Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Diane Hayden, publisher of Natural Nutmeg magazine, and I am excited to be introducing, today's our first day actually, our new Natural Nutmeg live lunch and learn videos. I'll be doing them Monday through Thursday with our expert writers and contributors from the magazine. And some of them are going to be, specifically focused on how we are dealing and coping with the COVID-19 situation, tips and everything from stress reduction to, natural medicine to things that you can do to incorporate into your daily life while we are all kind of hunkered down at home. And other interviews are going to be on experts about topics related to natural medicine, how to lead a more holistic lifestyle with tips that you can easily integrate into your daily life. So, Monday through Thursday, I'll be interviewing these experts. Like I said, everything from natural medicine to fitness, healthy eating, mindset, stress reduction, spirituality, and more. And today I'm excited to have with me Erica Wilcox. She is a licensed professional counselor and certified EMDR therapist who dedicates her work to holistically helping individuals and groups heal from stress and trauma. She is the founder and director of Wilcox Wellness Center for Personal Growth, which is a private and professional counseling practice right in Southington, Connecticut. Wilcox Wellness provides confidential and compassionate individual, group, family, and couples counseling for children, teens, and adults, in addition to state-of-the-art creative therapies such as equine-assisted therapy, art therapy, biofeedback, and wellness-based workshops. So thank you so much for being with me today, Erica. How are you?
Thank you for the lovely introduction, and thanks for having me. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Maybe just starting to get a little bit stir crazy today. So I thought as I was reviewing like what we were going to talk about, I'm like, this is perfect for me because for many of you who know me, I'm not a person to stay put easily. I'm usually, traveling a lot, or we have another home in Florida, and we're launching another magazine down in Naples, Florida. So I'm back and forth to Florida during the winter. And right now I'm in Connecticut, and happy to be here, obviously, with, friends and family and that kind of thing, but also getting a little bit like, how long is this going to last?
Right.
So,
Right.
we talked about, or we're going to talk about a lot of what you do and how you're helping people and what you're seeing in your practice, and some strategies that people can use and take with them. So where do you want to start? I mean, maybe let's just start by, talking about what you're seeing and what kinds of things are people coming to you for help with.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm, like you had mentioned, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I specialize in trauma recovery work, and primary population of individuals and groups that I work with struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. And so a lot of what I'm seeing, so my practice, we've gone all telehealth now. And we made that move early on in this process. And so we're so fortunate and so honored to still be able to connect with our clients, especially in this time of global crisis. And I'm seeing a wide variety of experiences, ranging from, we were discussing a little bit before, some people who are really geared towards being really active, productive, more kind of extroverted in that way, took these few weeks to kind of shift that to their home life if they're at home. And now as this progresses longer, some of this sense of grief, it's a grief across the board, loss. And so when we think of grief, a lot of people automatically think of death, and that's certainly happening right now for a large number of individuals, but grief also extends to the loss of our routine, the loss of these kind of daily connections with people. I even noticed with myself now doing teletherapy, I no longer get up and walk my client to the door, or sometimes there's a hug, and that's a loss too, noticing that. And there's a loss really of a sense of certainty, right? We don't know where this is going. And there's a ton of information that's coming out. And so people's nervous systems are on fire, and they're heightened. And so we're seeing a lot of which is normal, I want to really emphasize that a lot of mood lability, because our nervous systems are not knowing really if we need to fight, we need to flee, if we need to freeze, or if we need to fawn in order to survive what's going on. So there's a broad spectrum of things. And so what I really want to make clear to everybody that's tuning in, and what a gift to yourself to take a moment to check in with me here, is that however you are feeling is okay. Whatever you're doing is okay. And that I'm seeing there's a lot of an incredible amount of pressure, I think, to if you are quarantining. Now some people certainly are still going to work, and if any of you are joined in here who are still going to a physical building for work, and certainly any healthcare workers, thank you so much. We see you, and we honor you, and we respect you. And what we're seeing is that there's some pressure to be like really productive and
Right.
come out of this like really fit, or
Yeah.
I know how to make homemade bread. Yesterday I was like, I think I'm going to try to make bread. And my partner's like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because that's not my personality, right? But people trying to let me write a new book or something like that. And so I'm here to tell you that this is in some way, shape, or form a level of trauma. And what some people may notice is that, so I want you to think of an ocean floor, okay? And the bottom is clear, but underneath that sand are ships that have sunk and have been buried over time. These ships represent the stressors or traumas that someone has experienced throughout their life. So we can talk about trauma in the terms of a big T, something very big that seems, most people go, oh my gosh, that's so traumatic, right? Natural disaster, abuse, neglect, bullying, things like that. Or what we would call little T's. I don't really like the language around big and little because I think it kind of minimizes it, but little T's, which are traumas that may not be within our awareness, that are like those ships sunken on the bottom of the ocean floor. So here we are, like rowing our boats, going along our daily life, our routine, whatever that is, clear ocean floor, and then comes this meteor, right? Which is COVID-19 and all of the things that are coming as a result of this. And what is it going to do to the bottom of the ocean floor? It's going to stir a lot of stuff up. So the key here, and what I hope to bring to you today, are some ways to acknowledge what's going on for you and help bring yourself back to a place of centeredness, so that rowboat you're in is not getting toppled over, or if it does, you know how to get back on in a way that's effective and healthy for you. So that's what I'm seeing for now. I have serious concerns about the long-term implications for this mental health-wise. I think mental health is going to be the second pandemic that comes out of this. We're seeing it already. So I find it really important to be able to help educate the community about some signs and symptoms to watch out for, so you can kind of differentiate between, okay, is the support I'm getting now, and there's tons of resources out now, is the support I'm getting now enough, or is it time for me to get some professional help here? Because none of us are immune to the stressors of what's going on. So.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I'm
Mhm.
glad you brought up the point about people trying to be or feeling like they need to be more productive,
Yeah.
because I think that's important to just put into perspective. I think there needs to be a balance. I mean, I've been saying, this is an opportunity. I've been trying to focus on the positive. What is the positive opportunity that we all have coming from this? And part of that positive opportunity certainly is to be more productive, to do things we've always wanted to do, but we didn't have the time, to start a new project, that kind of thing. But I think we can't forget that the opportunity is also that it's telling us to slow down, to take time for ourselves, to sit with when we're uncomfortable, to, just be quiet and listen to what are the feelings that we're having. So I think there does need to be a balance between this, feeling like, okay, I have time now, I'm going to be productive, because that in and of itself is just keeping you in the busyness, which I
Right.
think overall the whole purpose for this on like a global spiritual level for me is we're being asked to slow down, to sit with feelings, to become better at working through some of that stuff and not fill our life with just more stuff.
Right. And I think that has been reflected to me a lot. And I think for a good part, I think of the folks that I've spoken with and worked with, that really aligns with them. And then for other people, that if their nervous system is so hijacked, the thought of even of sitting with their feelings becomes intolerable. The thought of doing something, well, let me get out and go for a walk every day, feels unreachable for them. And so, contrary to what people may believe coming from a therapist, I don't recommend people stay connected to their feelings 200% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that coming back, being able to pendulate between, and this is in trauma recovery work, this is something that we do, this pendulation of turning inward and connecting, and then kind of checking out and connecting out here, and then kind of going back. And so this is where grounding skills for wherever you're at, this, which grounding can be defined as this intentional detachment from intense things. So I usually use a chart, but we call it the window of tolerance. So we have, if you imagine, like, here's the window, right? And inside the window is where we can think, feel, and our behaviors are like aligned with that. It doesn't mean that we're neutral. It doesn't mean we're peace, love, gap. It means that we can move through things. When we get above the window, this is this hyper, arousal, where we'll see a lot of irritability, anxiety, anger, and kind of this revved upness. I call it, nervous system sunburn or emotional sunburn. Everything is just stingy, right? And below the window, which is this hypoarousal, where a lot of people can start to feel very numb, checked out, apathetic, depressed in that way. And so the key with it is to, how can we help people get back in the window, to recognize when they're outside, because we're all going to be outside the window at some point, right? And maybe more so than others. But to get in the window and start to work on, how do we widen the window a little bit? And that's this beautiful spot inside the window of tolerance, is where all the new learning takes place. Our prefrontal cortex is activated. This is the part that can do the to-do list and can learn a new skill, and that can follow through with things. Outside the window, the back of our brains are activated. That's the survival part. So that's why you can't learn, how to, if you don't crochet, you can't learn how to crochet if you're being chased by a bear. Like, it's not going to happen.
Not right. Not quite high on the list of priorities at that
Right.
moment.
Right, exactly, right? So for some folks, it's like, yes, this invitation to connect with myself spiritually, this invitation to slow down, this invitation to, like, what is this mindfulness and grounding stuff you talk about? And that aligns. But for some folks, that's triggering. And for
Right.
some people, especially some people with PTSD, slowing down feels incredibly anxiety provoking. They're used to like surviving like numb or aware. So like this middle ground is like, what is going on?
Yeah.
So that's why I focus a lot of my work in the beginning stages of therapy, um, around preparation and creating some resources around grounding. One of the primary type of therapy I do is called EMDR, and it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Woo, sounds really fancy. It's very cool. It's the gold standard for the treatment of trauma and anxiety. And it works direct in those beginning stages. We work on grounding in ways to get in that window of tolerance. So even I'll share some skills today with the group, of take some pages from EMDR, some tips from EMDR, that can be applicable and self administered.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. And then I want to circle back to what you said about what the future implications are going to be in terms
Yeah.
of what people should be aware of to look for, not only in their own feelings, but, you know, in people around them, friends, family, coworkers, that kind of thing. And what your suggestions are as far as, you know, what people can do and what we're going to need to do on a long-term basis, you know,
Right.
from all of this. But so let's make sure we don't forget to talk about that at the end.
Absolutely.
But if you want to jump into, you know, you start talking a little bit about what grounding is,
Yeah.
and then, you know, how you work with people on that and EMDR.
Sure. It's been a very challenging but cool, that's my clinical term, uh, experience learning EMDR online.
Yep.
I used to be in the camp of like, I am never going to do that online. Like, I'm very love to
Hands
be
on.
connected with my clients, and we're like sitting together. And but I found that like it's different, but it's just as effective. Um, and so I'm really pleased with it, of how it's. But there's lots of therapists now that are just supporting one another of how do we best help our clients in this way, and ourselves using grounding skills as well, right? So let me walk through a few things. I had a hard time because I feel like I could do like an 8-hour thing on grounding.
I'm sure.
What are the best ones? So I'm going to bring to you the best, what I feel are the best ones at this time. So if you think about, so again, grounding is an intentional detachment that can either help soothe and support your nervous system, your mind, your body, your spirit, right? So if you're above that window, it can help soothe it to bring it back down. Or grounding can be a way to mobilize if you're feeling really stuck, numb, and depressed, to bring it back up. So it works in that way. And ultimately, what it does is if you're thinking about, and this like maybe a trigger warning for any big sports fans right now, but if you're thinking about a basketball game, right, and and the play's starting to go wrong, the other team's going to score, what does the coach do? He calls a timeout so the team can like come together, come up with a game plan, regroup, center, and then go back. So grounding is similar in that way. So like take a break from what's going on out here or in here to slow it down, connect. It doesn't change what the trigger is. It doesn't, doing grounding skills is not going to change the realities of what's going on right now in the world, but it's going to help you move through it in a way that's less, so you suffer less. So my mission in my work is to help people suffer less. And so that's a way to do that. So there's different types of grounding. And if there is a way to, I can send you, because I put together, it keeps growing. I feel like every day after sessions, I add skills to the list, but it's about, I believe, a 4-page list now of different types of grounding skills. So I can maybe email it to you,
Yeah.
and you can send it out, or people want to email me, I'll give my contact information at the end. But there's different types. So the first is mental grounding, right? How do we work with our thoughts, our cognitions, our belief systems, our schemas? Physical grounding. Physical grounding is one of my personal favorites, because if you move a muscle, you can change a thought. And it's really hard to think your way out of an intense feeling. That's why saying just calm down never works.
Right.
If we could talk ourselves out of it all the time, we'd be doing it by now. But moving your body and connecting with your body is a great way to do that. So physical, mental, spiritual grounding, connecting with a higher power, whatever that is for you. And then self-compassion grounding, which is kind words of affirmation and attending to parts of you that really need extra love, care, and attention. So, and it can be done pretty much anytime, anywhere, or any place. And so I'll walk you through, the acronym came from Kim Machard, who is she's an EMDR therapist based out of Canada. She did some work in Vietnam, and she has taken her practice online. And so I've been learning a lot from her about virtual EMDR. And so I connected with her and said, I have this talk today. I'd love to use this way you kind of play it out. And she said, oh, yes, please do. So she's so generous to share this organization of it. And so the word is, or the words, the phrase is come back. So, and each one stands for a way to ground yourself. So I've adapted it for my own personal preference and to share with you today. But so the C in come back represents connect. And so if you're thinking about connecting to a supportive presence, there's a lot of disconnection now, right? Physical disconnection. And one of the things, especially now, is this is kind of two parts actually, because I know I found last week I really noticed I felt really flooded by the amount of like social and professional webinars and meetings and things like this. And I literally like double booked myself one day. I was like, how did I do this? Like, it was like, oh, I signed up for 2 coffees with friends. And then I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like, why is my calendar more full? And so for some people, they may need to connect more virtually than others. It all depends on your personality, but that connect with the presence, what's really helpful is making eye contact. So if you're with somebody, if you're living with somebody, to do that, or if it's virtually in that way, to really, and it's hard, right? So it's really hard if we're, if we look in this way, to be able to try to connect, because it releases oxytocin when we connect, when we hug. And I'm going to grab a pillow. I want to hug too. So we all have mirror neurons, right? And so it seems kind of silly on the outside, but I find it to be helpful, is if you are on the other end with somebody and you give a nice hug like this and the other person's doing it, you're both mirroring this nervous system release of oxytocin, and it's soothing. It's not the same as a real hug, of course, right? So, but that can be helpful. So thinking about connecting through the eyes, through the face, a hug, a touch, or an image, looking at an image of something or someone that is really supportive, soothing for you. So that's the C of a way to ground yourself. The O in come back is to orient to the present moment with your senses. So for all of those that are listening, if you're able to do this, I'll invite you to participate. It is the countdown to calm down is what I kind of nicknamed it. I have it on the back of my business cards because nobody really writes appointments on the back of their business cards anymore. So I said, let me put a grounding scale on the back of my card so at least everybody has it when they take them, right? So the 5, so you're going to notice 5 things in your environment that you notice, and really focus on the colors or textures. So for example, I notice I have a candle over here. I notice the green plant. I notice my purple walls. I notice I have some angel deck cards in the corner over there. And I notice, you know, I notice this wooden shelf. It looks really sturdy, right? So just 5 things. And then 4 things that you feel, physically feel. So I can feel my feet on the ground. That's one thing that when I'm working with clients, if I notice that they start to get out of that window, I'll say, do you feel your feet? Let's feel our feet, right? Sometimes I think they're like, again, right? But always, at least I get a good laugh sometimes.
Yep.
So feeling your feet on the ground, really feeling them, right? And noticing, you know, I can feel my bottom sitting on the chair here. I can feel my necklace. I can feel this. 3 things that you hear. And so this may be a thing that you hear outside of the room, something you hear inside the room, and one thing you can hear with your body. Just check that out. And 2 things that you can smell. Again, I smell coffee and some oil diffusing over there, right? And then one thing that you can taste, or a kind word of affirmation if you don't have that. So the affirmation may be, you know, this, some bad things are happening. I'm not a bad person, right? I have love and support, or I'm doing the best that I can, or it's okay to rest. The one thing you taste, I'll share. Just take a moment to check in with that, actually, after going through that. The 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, smell, and taste, or kind word of affirmation. And just see where it hangs out in your body or your breath. What that does is engages right in the present moment. So if we're above or below the window of tolerance, it only takes a few moments. It can bring it back. For some people, we do this a few times over because it may take longer. So that's kind of a grounding tip from me to you, is that you may find that there's a skill or a technique that works really well for you, or something that you need to do more. There's a big difference between taking a breath and doing that for 5 minutes. It's going to have a much different thing, right? The taste part is a fun trick in the sense that if you get a cold glass of water or a piece of gum or a piece of candy whatever it is, or if you have none of those available to you in the moment, I hope you have water. Everyone hydrate, especially now. That if you think of sucking on a lemon, it will activate saliva in your mouth. Saliva breaks down food. It activates our digestive system. And what happens, we've heard that rest and digest. When our digestive system is working properly, we're not in a state of panic, survival, or overwhelm. And so it sends the message to the brain and the nervous system like, okay, we're all right now. So that cold glass of water, piece of candy, thinking of that, kind of just getting your mouth wet in that way can be really helpful. So we did the C, the O, the M is mobilizing with movement. My most favorite in that way. So I had to be really selective of what to share with. One is the butterfly hug. So if you hook your fingers like this is a page from EMDR. EMDR, we use what's called bilateral stimulation. It's either fingers or tapping, or we have audio back and forth, gets the brain back online. So we hook our fingers and we put them right here. And if you feel comfortable, you can close or lower your eyes or just keep them where it feels best for you. There's always choice. And then just start to lightly alternate tapping. If anything starts to stir up or make it worse, stop immediately. There's a small risk of that, but generally it's okay. And take a few breaths. And then pause. So that's the butterfly hug. It's taught in, you can use it with children, any age, any place, anywhere. It's used widely in groups when they're doing in clinical work and recent traumatic events for groups. It's because we can't do EMDR on every single person in that way, and so to help the group in a way, that's a technique to do, is the butterfly hug. If you can Google butterfly hug, and there's probably dozens of videos of tutorials on it as well. So there's a butterfly hug, and another way of mobilizing with movement is another form of bilateral stimulation. So I'll show you. If you're able to stand up, you can do it with me. And I'm going to move my little, on an ottoman here with no wheel, is to do cross things. So it's kind of funny because it feels like sweating the oldies, which is like, you know, I guess you could go like this too, which is good. But doing cross things like this, if you're not mobile like this, you know, being able to tap in a way.
Right? You could even do that seated too, right?
Yes, because I see here, I just doing the same thing, right?
Yep.
You can do it this way, right? And so that's a way to get to be able to move in that way. I just learned this in a virtual training I did Friday with Robin Shapiro, who's a pioneer of EMDR, was trained under the creator of EMDR, and it's YWLT, which makes me want to sing YMCA. But and so if you're doing Y, so everyone's like hunched over now too. It's Y, really stretch out your fingers You can see my fingers, they're like this, like jazz hands, right? It opens the chest, right? We're doing W, that brings that, this back here, it's really tight for a lot of people. That's where I hold all of my stress is back there. T, it's a little more awkward, but it's like this pressure. I mean, L, excuse me, L, right? And then T, you can add a warrior to that if you want to, with your legs, right? But it's just a way to move. So if you think about that M in comeback, mobilize with movement. The E is to extend the exhale and pair it with a sound. So we have the vagus nerve runs from the top of our head to the tip of our toes. And when we're activated, it's sending the alarm to every major organ in our body, right? So when we help support and soothe the vagus nerve, it turns the alarm off and sends that message to all of our major organs like, it's okay, right? So one way to do that is to exhale longer than the inhale. So pairing, we just start with exhaling all the way. And then inhale halfway. Exhale. And the breath, right? If you pair it with a sound, with the breath, like the ocean or, the wind. I like to use this chime I use often with people, and I'll ring it here. I always like to let people know I'm going to ring it before I do, so it's not startling, right? And try to see if you can get the exhale to follow the chime, right? Because it will be loud and then kind of dissipate, and then do an inhale. And we'll just try 2 of these. So just a half inhale. Half inhale. Great. I don't know if you could hear how, I don't know how
Yeah,
well it traveled. Did it travel?
a little bit. It felt like you were still exhaling a little bit past where I could hear it,
Okay. It's
but
probably because it's right here. Right?
yeah, I'm sure. But people could follow you for sure.
Yeah. So if you think about anything with breath work, the exhale longer than the inhale. Sometimes I'll recommend to people to get little sticker dots, like at a tag sale or something like that, where you can stick them on your frequently seen places, like the light switch, the refrigerator, not your car now, unless you're still going, but frequently seen places. And when you see the dot, you think of stop on the dot and take 1 to 5 of those breaths. It does wonders. It's just a little pause, a way to ground yourself in the moment. And the last 3 briefly is, so we did the COME, the, where? Oh, missed the B, there we go. So of B and the A, so anchoring in your body, noticing in your body, the B in your body, where you feel whatever's coming up, right? If you can name the emotion, you're 10 steps ahead of the game. Because when you can name it, then we can claim it. If you think about like really scary movies where like the monster or the villain is like in the dark and like you can't see, right? And then whatever you're imagining in your mind is like way worse. And then so you hear like stomping and rustling, and it's dark, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's something like this, and it's like a little bunny in the movie or something. It's not, you're like, oh, my mind completely made up its
unless
thing.
it's the rabbit from Monty Python, then
Yeah,
you better
okay.
be scared.
That's true. Right. So, but being able to name the emotion is huge. And so, and if you Google emotions list, it sounds really like, why would I know my emotions? But you'll find a list of like 100+ emotions, and like broken down, like, oh, you think it's sadness? Really? Like, there's shades of sadness that goes with that, right? And it's anger. Is it irritable? Is it rage? Is it frustration? And so ways to differentiate. But if you can name it and then say, where does this show up in my body right now? That itself gets you back in the window, or at least closer to it.
So if they just Google emotions list.
Yes, yeah, and
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
send one to you too.
Yeah.
I can find a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important because when you first said, like emotions, naturally my mind's gravitating toward, oh, I can identify fear or anger or, love or whatever it might be. But you're
Right,
right. Like it really does, that doesn't really get to the root of what the emotion is that's coming up for you, I don't
right,
think. So I think
right,
it would be important for everybody to go look at that and just see
right,
like, oh, wow, like I need anger, okay, but let's get beneath that. Like
right,
what kind of anger, what is really causing that? Like it could be a
right.
number of things, from frustration to resentment to irritability, like you said. So you got to go deeper, I think, then.
Yeah, and there's usually thoughts attached to that. In
Mhm.
EMDR, we work with identifying emotion and like the belief that's attached to that. They're like backpackers together in the wild. That you normally they always come in a pair. So that's important, because especially now, a lot of what I'm seeing and working with is fear, right?
Mhm.
And that often is connected to feelings of powerlessness, um, loss of control, things like that. But powerlessness may show up here for me, and lack of control may show up here. And so just to notice somatically where it is, because this is how trauma gets stuck. What When it goes from this is traumatic and stressful, and then it turns into PTSD and clinical depression and clinical anxiety, things like that, is when it gets hijacked in the body, when it gets stuck there and there's no support to help find its way out. And so grounding helps move it through the body. I can't emphasize that enough.
Mhm.
Um, and the last two parts are connecting to a neutral place in your body. Is there anything that I can find that's neutral? And the K and comeback is a kind and compassionate affirmation for yourself. And if it's hard to do that, right? And you could have a whole series on that, right? If it's hard to do that, imagine like how you would talk to a small child, a good friend, of how they're handling or feeling something. Most people would never say to a child the things that they say to themselves.
Right. That's
And
exactly
so,
right. Yep.
right. And nobody would beat themselves up in ways that they do sometimes. So that's the comeback for grounding. Small snippets of things, but I hope you find it helpful. And I'll send you along
Yeah, the
information too
list.
to
That's great.
disseminate. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely do that. Just before we wrap up, anything that you wanted to say about what we need to look out for, I suppose, like moving on in the future, what.
Yeah, yeah. So again, knowing that um, so first, if you're a trauma survivor yourself, and maybe you've been in therapy before, it's really important now more so than ever to make sure that you're connected with the therapist and appropriate help, because it can be very triggering. It can be connected to past things. So that's one. But things to to look out for are, so some of the symptoms of PTSD, right? So we're seeing now more like acute, what we call acute stress disorder, because it's in the beginning of a lot of things, well, at least in Connecticut. But what we're going to see, or what to look out for, is avoidance and numbing. So if you feel often like your head separate from your body, or if you're losing track of stuff and just feel really kind of out of touch, and losing track of things, that's something to watch out for. A disturbance in sleep for a prolonged amount of time. Where we're at now in Connecticut, if you're not getting good sleep, that's normal, that's within range. But you want to look at any feelings of really intrusive thoughts or images, or we call flashbacks of things playing out that seem to hijack your mind. That's going to be an important thing to work out for. Feelings of hopelessness. There's a lot of identity, people kind of questioning identity things now, especially, I work with a lot of type A folks, and so like the slowdown is like, what's going on? Because I thrived, and hi, you know, like this. And so anxiety around that, persistent worry, things that you just can't shake off. I do want to emphasize though, don't wait until you're in crisis, or if I'm saying, you know, to say, here's some symptoms of PTSD, it's important to know, but don't wait until it's that bad to reach out for help. That's
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the timeline. Like what are we talking about here timeline wise? When should people reach out?
It's different for everybody. Some people right now are coasting along and doing really well, and then they're going to crumble later.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people right now that are falling apart and need a whole lot of help. There's some people that are in between and think like, okay, I got this. This is hard. I moved through it. And they kind of coast through and got some good supports, and they'll turn out okay. It's so individualized in that way. And so it's always good. Just like you go to your physician for like, you know, your annual exam and your checkup, and you take your car for an oil change. It's now more so than ever to reach out to a therapist to say like, hey, here's what I have going on. Here's what I'm experiencing. Let's consult about it. Kind of is there anything that you would recommend? And to be able to get to check in that way is helpful. So that's
right.
That would be my recommendation around it. If you're questioning it, reach out.
Right, exactly.
If somebody's questioning it, or if you're like super against it, reach out.
Right. Why is it coming up as a question, and why am I getting defensive about it?
Right.
But I totally agree with you. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, you know, all of us doing some sort of a check-in, because who knows, like something could come up in a session that you know, that gets uncovered that you weren't even really aware of. So
and that's I mean therapists across the world have upped their own therapy sessions right now to be able to, myself included, of like, okay, we're working with a lot of intense right now, while simultaneously dealing with whatever our personal experiences of this.
Totally,
it's unprecedented. It's never happened, you know.
Self-care for the caregiver.
Absolutely. We kind of joke that it's like their grand therapist, but
yeah, that's funny. So how can people get a hold of you? Let's give them information as far as like website, email, whatever you want to.
Sure. So my website is wilcoxwellness.com. My last name, Wilcox, WILCOX, wellness.com. My email is ewilcox@wilcoxwellness.com, or it still goes to me, but at help@wilcoxwellness.com. So that may be easier to remember. And we're all virtual now. So it's myself and 4 other therapists, and those are the best ways to get in touch. We're on Facebook, Wilcox Wellness, and then on Instagram too.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Erica.
Thank
This is
you.
a great talk. I think you gave us a lot of excellent strategies that we can use. And I think, the biggest takeaway for me is just that, there's nothing wrong with any of us checking in right now with,
No, please
with your
do. Yeah,
therapist.
be
And
proactive
right,
to it.
exactly.
So much, it's so much better to do it that way.
Totally, totally. So this is recorded. We will have it up on our Natural Nutmeg website. You can also like our Facebook page, Natural Nutmeg Magazine. I'll be posting it there too, and also information about these weekly calls. Tomorrow I'm interviewing Dr. Katie Fearson. She's a naturopath, and we're going to be talking about immune function and gut function and all that good stuff. And again, you can also sign up at www.naturalnutmeg.com to get on our email list, where you'll get daily emails about all the talks that we're doing and also the recordings as well. So thanks everybody for joining us. And thanks again, Erica.
You, everybody,
Hope you have a great day.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.